All right, Gregor, excited for this one. It's going to be a bit different than last few episodes, even though we are going to follow up a couple of threads that we were talking about. Um, yeah, so last time we spoke about the complexity of being a man in these modern times and conflicting expectations and the supermarket of identities, as you framed it. And we did a little teaser in the very end about yeah, I guess you can say more about it, but kind of like a framework of masculine and feminine, mature and immature qualities, and how you've been using that in workshops, and I guess also when working with people as a way to orient different reactions and places we have inside of ourselves as a way, I guess, to operate from a more mature place. So yeah, good to be here with you.
Cool. Yeah, excited to be here again, David. And first of all, it's good to be back in summer. Like summer's back here. Makes me feel immediately more relaxed when there's warmth around. And yeah, cool to hear your recap of the last conversation. It's a lot in there.
Mm.
And I think we also ended the last podcast with a little bit more explanation of what I call the masculine and the feminine, and giving it different names, like in different wisdom traditions, like the yin and the yang, the active and the receptive principle, and just to talk a little bit more about the essence of these principles. And yeah, I'm happy to go into more mature and immature versions of this, and how we can again orient ourselves in the very different qualities we may seem displayed, or how people live their lives, basically, because it's somewhere, always falls somewhere in that spectrum.
Yeah.
And maybe it's good to have a little trigger warning at that moment. It's a, a modern thing to do, or postmodern thing to do. It's a trigger warning.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah, you hear, and just because I've had conversations over the last year, specifically with people mostly from a younger generation, but not only, but more, where if I talk about masculine and feminine, kind of like all the warning lights go up, and it's like, wait, what a moment! Are you bringing us back into stereotypical land of men are like this and women are like that? And somewhere along the lines of conversation of like, these are just constructed ideas, the whole gender debate, let's leave it at that simple word. Where is this really, are we talking about fundamental structures of the universe that we're kind of like given and we're exploring and working with, or are these just human constructions out of the patriarchal model and so on, that are boxing people into too narrow ways of living? And so I agree. I just want to say, if people don't relate to this, then that's fine. But for me, that's an undeniable reality of life, that structures like these exist. However, how we interpret them is very much up to debate, and have been culturally shaped in different cultures and times. And so actually the conversation we're having today is my hope can bring a little bit more lightness, maybe, and also openness to the conversation, that it's not so hard boxed, but actually a huge nuanced field. But that there are masculine and feminine traits in the world and in people, and how strongly biologically wired they are, and so forth. But we're not here to debate today. But for me, this has been a huge support in discovering. It was a lot of like trial and error myself, and in getting some information from the outside, in not just seeing, so is this now masculine or feminine? And when I was a younger man, there was like a strong feminist movement in politics and society, where it was very clear, like, how do we get women more into positions of power? And we need more women in decision-making structures and everywhere, basically. And somewhere the undertone was also, we need more feminine energy, because we're in a world that's too much based on masculine energies. And somehow that made sense to me, because we feel that, but at the same time, something did not make a lot of sense to me, because I would say, how I would phrase it today is like, yeah, we definitely need more feminine energy, but what kind? And do we really need less masculine energy?
Yeah.
But what kind? And maybe we need more masculine and more feminine energies in mature expressions, rather than finding out, so now we had too much of this and we just want to go over to the other thing, which in principle would not change anything really. It would change the form, but not the dynamic. So to see what expressions are actually more life affirming, more inclusive, more clean, more essential, and which I would then call mature. And we all know when we feel maturity in a person, and we feel a lot of, when we all know when we feel a lot of immaturity in a person. We don't have to be deep psychologists. We kind of like have an intuitive sense, maybe not to a point, and we would not always fully agree, but mostly we feel if a person comes from more freedom inside, more clarity inside, more capacity to discern and to support life in different forms, rather than just coming from more immature drives that takes itself always very much at the center of everything. And there's a masculine and a feminine version of that. The masculine often is more obvious, but we already talked about people pleasing, which is also taking oneself very much at the center of everything, which is sometimes a feminine version. So we become more maybe informed about the more not so obvious forms of these kind of things. So that's the kind of basic framing I would give to this, why even have this conversation, and not to have it on, do we need more masculine or more feminine qualities, but what kind of expressions of this.
I'll just briefly add two things. So one is, I think this is already a very interesting point. We're probably not going to go too deep into it, but I think there is culturally an inability to actually discern between who's coming from a mature and who's coming from an immature place, especially online, I think. So I think, well, I can speak for myself. Like when I meet people in person, it's always a lot easier for me to get a clear sense of where they're coming from. And online, it can be tougher. And I think most people would agree that as of right now, it's not the most mature people who are in the positions of power. So it's an interesting place, where I think it's a source of a lot of confusion. If like people and I think we spoke about this briefly last time as well, this like very successful people often not being the most mature ones, and the kind of confusion that creates internally if like, here's something I want to accomplish, but the kind of person who gets there is not someone who has cultivated these qualities, that can create confusion. And the second thing I want to say is, if this model can contribute to the understanding that masculine and feminine are not like, we don't have to take from one to add more to the other, I will be a very happy man, and I will gladly just point to this model and be like, here you can clearly see, because it's just something that I see in many circles, this misunderstanding that also people feeling quickly attacked by the other side of what they maybe feel more comfortable with. And it's like a tragic misunderstanding, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am not anymore in the position of trying to solve that situation in the world, because it's a difficult, deep problem. But I think from experience, like it helped me a lot. And I've been teaching this model in workshops and presentations for many, many years from now. And like it's an overwhelming, always the same response of like, wow, that makes a lot of sense, and it's actually very helpful and practical.
Yeah.
And I think that's my orientation. Does it help? Does it create more clarity? And is it something that you can actually use in your life? And I use that, and I know a lot of people do. And one more thing, maybe to the mature and immature, and we'll probably find a way to visualize also what we're talking here, because there's a kind of a very masculine way of presenting the topic, which is like a nice diagram, like a vertical and a horizontal line creating four quadrants. And the vertical would be the mature going up and immature going down. Again, even that could be debated. It could also be down and up. It doesn't actually matter. It's just a way of creating a differentiation. And to your point of not being able to discern maturity, I think actually the times are cool right now, because certain forms of immaturity are so obvious, or becoming so obvious in people of that hold power, men and women. That actually doesn't matter. The men still are more prominent there. And I think it always used to be a little bit that way, but it was a little bit more covered. It had more kind of like a coating around it. And so, as destructive as these times are right now and chaotic and unpleasant, I think it's for some reason it's good that we can see more clearly, like, this is obviously not mature, like very obviously. And I think sometimes it behaved maturely, or like it presented it mature, but it was not embodied. So maturity I would also equate with the usual phrase, like, can you walk your talk? Can you not just like speak your speech and make it sound nice, but really live it? So that is a hallmark of maturity, where you not just live a quality when it's easy and it's all going well, but when it gets difficult, but you can still uphold it.
Cool. What's the best way to go into the graph and the visualization if we use
so that? As I said, we'll find a way to make this also visually available to people. But just if you're now listening, just imagine a cross. So you're dividing a space into four quadrants, four spaces, and you have a vertical line and a horizontal line. And so the vertical line would be, as I said, like the axis of maturity going up. Everything that goes more up, like, would have, like in nature, we say we develop, we grow. We rise above ourselves, so there's more maturity. And if it stays more down, it stays more immature. What is important here is that this is not the quality judgment of like good or bad. This is just, it's not like, oh, this is horrible or bad and we should not have that because it's immature. But it's also clear that we prefer mature responses of people rather than immature. If somebody yells at you and is very hurt by everything that you say, you will have a different relationship and response in yourself to that person than if somebody comes with a more nuanced and wise and spacious and inclusive way of talking to you. And so this is the vertical line. And then on a horizontal line, we would place the kind of like the axis, the spectrum of masculine and feminine. Again, I see this, I think we talked last time already about that, as a spectrum, though there's not like this is the masculine and this is the feminine, but there is a spectrum of how life expresses itself in these different orientations. And so I usually, looking at the paper, I place the masculine on the left and the feminine on the right. But again, there's no right or wrong here. And so with these two lines, you would create a place like a space of four spaces or four quadrants. And then you can start looking into pretty much all qualities or behaviors or expressions or principles, and see where does it fall. Is it a more, in essence, a more masculine or a more feminine expression? And is it the more mature or more immature expression?
Mm-hmm.
So I think last time we already talked that the feminine way of life is more relationally oriented. So it's more oriented in the process rather than the act, and the masculine more maybe in the action or problem and solving situations orientation. And it's also more oriented to clarity and principles and definition of things, where the feminine is more oriented in kind of easing the hard edges or the differences and more into blending.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already like a general orientation. And then you can see, and we thought maybe it'd be cool to have a kind of like a practical life example to make this more accessible,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can already see how does this transport into more mature versions where I can hold it with more space, or very immature, young, unconscious kind of expressions.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
Cool.
if that makes sense first. If you put yourself into the shoes of a listener, what would be a first maybe question, or what would you need to have it more clear?
I think as a general frame, I mean, it's not the first time I'm hearing it. I can also add, I've once experienced you guiding people into an experience of this at a workshop, and it was really powerful, like sort of like a collective ritual where these four quadrants are made available physically in a space, and then you can explore like how does it feel to be in those different spaces, and even like relating to people who are in one of the other quadrants or in the same quadrant. So yeah, I've experienced it actually twice already, and it was a really powerful experience. I think it makes most sense to go into practical examples, and what I imagine is that many questions will be about different nuances. And maybe one question that comes up for me is like noticing, if we go into an example that I bring in, will we always agree on what's mature and immature, or will there, like, can we universally say, yeah, this is more of a mature way of doing it and this is more of an immature way of doing it, or are there places where it's not that clear?
Yeah, no, that's a great place to hold, because first of all, let's find out.
Yeah.
And again, like all of these things are orientations, but
Yeah.
not final definitions.
Yeah.
And we will use words of qualities like discipline, for example. If I would place discipline as its essence, I would use that as a relatively mature and very strong masculine quality, the discipline to follow something through, or follow through with something even though you don't want it,
Mm-hmm.
which is important and very life affirming, because you
Mm-hmm.
need to brush your teeth even if you don't want to, and
Mm-hmm.
that's, we all need to learn that as kids, or you need to learn something, or anything you learn, you need to follow through. And if you would just leave it up to if you want it,
Mm-hmm.
which would be the pleasure orientation, oh, I don't feel like it today, which is more feminine expression, then something will not happen.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you take discipline too far and too extreme, and you don't listen anymore, and I think we talked about it like last time also, like you
Yeah.
set yourself, your mind on something, on a goal, but you don't start to disconsider or not take into account anymore how you're doing, or how your body is doing, or parts of yourself are doing, you will
Mm-hmm.
become, in my book again, like you will fall into a more immature version, where you're becoming very hard and rigid or fundamental. So the same quality can be in a more mature expression, or if you push it too far, too hard, too extreme, um, you might end up in a more immature version. And again, we all know that somehow. I think we all have somehow an intuitive sense, but we have to learn to look at this deeper voice in ourselves, or listen to that deeper voice where we know like this feels right on or not. And it also depends on the phase of life, or if you're 8
Yeah.
or 50 or 70 or 25.
Yes.
And so it's not the word that we place now here, but also taking into account from where does it come from inside of
Yeah.
yourself? What energy does it carry, or where is it
Yeah.
motivated from?
I think this is really important, that, and maybe this is part of why it can be not so easy to, or confusing, like who's acting from a mature, immature place, is that the form can look quite similar on the outside, but the space where it's coming from can be just completely different.
Exactly.
Like, I can be disciplined in a way where I'm deeply compassionate to sides of myself that really don't want to do this and that are struggling and in pain, or I can just completely disconnect myself from those parts, and then it will probably backfire at some point.
Exactly. I can have a healthy discipline, or become very stubborn, or fundamental with this. However, whatever, disregarding whatever happens, I will do this because
Yeah.
this is what I set my mind to do.
Okay, so shall we use an example and map it?
Happy to hear something.
Well, you suggested something before we started recording, which would be something around how do I structure my days, something like this, or my weeks?
For example, yeah, a bit like daily life situations, when you
Mm-hmm.
choose to make a break, when to work, because
Mm-hmm.
often in this like deeper foundations of how we hold ourselves in life often become visible.
Mm-hmm.
But happy to hear anything else also. It's like,
Yeah, no, I can share a couple of things that come up
yeah,
there, and we can see how we want to place them.
oh,
So
cool.
one very clear structure I've established that I'll share with my clients is, I have like various practices of reviewing the past. And so the smallest review practice, you froze for me right now. Can you still hear me?
I'm still here. I hear you well.
Okay, cool. The smallest form of practice there is the weekly review, which I do like on either Sunday evening or Monday morning, which is just looking back at the past week, celebrating things that went well, acknowledging things that didn't go well, and kind of like seeing what do I want to keep on doing and what needs adaptation. And then that informs how I plan my next week, which I usually do on a Monday, where I look ahead at the week, look at the appointments I have, and then plan like different projects that I want to accomplish, and ideally on which days I want to. Yeah.
And you would like to have just a little view of what's going on in there, or is there something how you experience yourself when you do this, or what happens when you don't do it, or you
Uh-huh.
or something else comes up, or
Yeah. I mean, like for me personally, I remain my sanity by doing this practice consistently. Yeah, I
okay,
noticed
so and let's maybe already take a few notes here. Like for example, like
Mhm,
consistency
mhm,
is a very healthy masculine quality,
mhm.
because it's not dependent on your mood, I hear,
Yeah.
but like there is a consistency that you rely on, and that helps you actually to stay sane and focused.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so I do know that compared to most people around me, I need more of these kind of structures that I just described to feel oriented during the day. Like it's okay, like on the weekend, for example, I don't do this stuff and it's fine. But if I don't do any of these practices for, let's say, a week, I feel quite disoriented inside of myself, and like it's hard for me to keep on tracking. Am I focusing on the right things? What is what is a workload that is enough? Like everything gets a bit more foggy and unclear.
Cool. There's already a lot in there, for example, and that starts to become also more alive, like, because this is not just a map of where we put a bunch of words, but they have an interaction, and they can become the medicine or the illness to each other, let's say.
Yeah.
So what you said, like structure, which we can also place in the mature masculine, gives you orientation and stability. So structure and stability can go there. I'll leave you a moment to type it in.
And stability, you said?
Yeah.
Stability.
And we don't have to put them there now, but of course, reliability, consistency,
Yeah.
similar words of that ilk are expressions of this. And you also said if you don't do that, you see that probably I would say that you fall into a more immature feminine expression where there is a certain overwhelm and a lack of focus. Like if you just float, like the unhealthy version of floating. Oh, I'm floating around and this happens and that happens. I become a leaf in the wind without any orientation, and that leaves an overwhelm. And I think you said a nice word before that I didn't catch now. Disorientation, right?
Okay, and how far would that be on the feminine spectrum from your perspective?
Well, I think it relates to the feminine because there is something where you're not in tight focus, and when we can put also something on the feminine and the mature version where you are in flow, like an openness and flow. So there is these moments where, like when you go to holiday, then you probably, I mean, I don't know, some people also do that, but or probably you have aspects in your life where you not rigidly schedule your moments. Maybe I put you on the spot
so
now, but
I'm gonna put something to the immature masculine, which I can relate to very much, which is stubbornness.
Exactly.
So I'm great at being stubborn.
Exactly.
And,
Which is, I have an idea, but I don't have any availability or openness or space anymore to let that idea be something different. So I will just like double down. And again, stubbornness in the right amount creates consistency, creates perseverance, another beautiful mature masculine, where even in the face of difficulty or challenge, I keep going. I stick to the path, like this very classical, traditional masculine qualities. I have an idea and I will stick to it. And again, but too much of this, or in the right or in the wrong context, becomes just like outright stubbornness. And like little children, like when they have an idea, they want this now, and something changes, like everything becomes this thing. And again, we can see sometimes on the world stage this happening in leaders where there's just like no more capacity, like our mature versions are hijacked by our stem brain and like protectiveness and our instincts, and I need this now, otherwise there is no way forward anymore. Whereas on the medicine, again, is going to the mature feminine, is like and understanding the nature of life as change. And the capacity to be with that change creates a certain openness and flow and a receptivity. And whereas in the masculine, there is this orientation of wanting to know, in the feminine, there is this ease of not knowing, but not knowing if that takes too much space. Like I let my whole life be a not knowing. I don't know if I want to brush my teeth now or cook something for you tomorrow or whatever. Then I can go into this overwhelm instead of being disorientation. And I have no more discernment of what's actually important. and I'm just flooded.
Yeah. So right now, the way we've framed all of this, it's still quite binary. And I'd love to flesh out some more in between places. If there's something within my example, great, but it can also be something else. But just because right now, if I look at this and the way we've been talking about it, it's almost like there's only four options, which is not how I understood you using this model, because it's more a spectrum than like a black and white thing.
Right. Yeah. Like every quality, like even the way you maybe design that ritual or that consistent practice probably has different elements to it.
Yeah.
Or for example, like what happens if you don't do it? How you're relating to yourself then? Are you like punishing yourself because now I didn't do it, which would be the masculine immature version of like actively I say punishing or yeah, demanding I'm not finding the right word now, like demanding that you're guilty, you know, like now you need to pay for
Yeah.
it somehow.
Repercussion, something like this.
Yeah. Or you could also be like, again, and yes, I'm still placing it in binary ways just to create the nuance, but there's overlap. But so either you banish yourself or you say like, yeah, but it's okay, you know, like an over understanding mother, you know, today you didn't feel like it, and you just become too understanding, which is just like too much allowance, or just like
Like anything goes.
anything goes, exactly.
Yeah.
And nothing ever has a consequence, you know, like in the masculine, you notice things have consequences. In the feminine, you want to be just with the flow of the moment. And depending on the moment, it can be that this or that happens more, or maybe it's even needed. And a mature feminine response would be to respond to, like with children, it's like, I know, I felt, okay, now you didn't do it because this and this happened. Maybe you were sick, or just a triggered moment appeared, or something else was more important. And then the mature masculine would come in as well and say, okay, now this didn't happen, but we know this is important. So let's find the time to do it. So they are not working as opposites, but actually as reinforcing each other. And that's also, the more it is mature, the less it is like either or if I'm doing this, then that can't happen, but they're actually supporting it, which does not mean they're the same.
Yeah.
And something maybe that I wanted to say at the very beginning in a model like this is that, let's say in the older times of humanistic potential methods or practices, it was often spoken of, or in esoteric languages, as like balancing the masculine and the feminine, or the inner man, the inner woman. And again, that never felt really true to me. And also my understanding of this is more that it is finding the right balance of each moment, but that doesn't mean that there is an equal shared amount of masculine or feminine.
Yeah.
But there's a balancing in having things available.
Yeah.
And maybe in one moment, like I have a very strong masculine orientation as the response to the situation. And you know, when I'm, again, I want to have a different way of being with my beloved or with my family, or when I'm in holiday, or when I'm chilling down, than when I'm starting my Monday morning workday. It's probably a different gear that I'm using in myself.
Yeah. For me, it really helped to understand that the idea of balance is not something set, but it's something dynamic. Like for me to be in balance, I need to be able to dynamically respond. And I think a great example of this is people, and very often it is actually men, operating in jobs that are very dangerous, like let's say a firefighter or something like this. it's healthy that they're not in that moment where they, let's say they need to go into a burning house, let themselves be emotionally affected by the death of someone. If they have no way of digesting that afterwards, it'll probably become like an immature masculine thing of like disconnecting. But in that moment, the balance and the like was life serving is like, yeah, I focus on saving the ones I can save.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a beautiful example where in the mature masculine, there's I can prioritize and
Yeah.
also consciously disconnect from something
Yeah.
because it follows a higher vision.
Yeah.
So, and that, but if that becomes like my default mode in life, whatever I do, we become that kind of like a bit like stereotypical male that still sometimes we think is the masculine quality of like emotionally detached, stoic, the man that does not speak, and you never knew what he felt his entire life long, like his entire life, like that kind of like 50s man that often were war veterans because for them sharing their emotions meant they would let down their guards and they would be flooded with all those things that they may have experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if you do that, then you're not just consciously prioritizing, you're falling into this immature version of being run by a default mode that you cannot escape anymore. And there's no choice. Maturity also means I have choice. I go into this situation now fully action and problem solving oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the choice to work with whatever comes up afterwards. At the same time, if I go to the feminine, I let myself be totally taken by feeling all of what this means, of people dying, of all the repercussions that will maybe go through all the generations, which if we are very open, we can feel all of those things.
Yeah.
But then I would become like I would go into a certain freeze or inertia, which is like the feminine immaturity that I become so inert because everything is an equal option. And I don't know what to do. And then like everything is so overwhelming that I don't know what to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you said something beautiful in our pre-conversation also, like of another situation where there was a um, you were checking how to respond to a service that didn't go as you had wished or that was promised. And one way was like to get very angry, or the other was like to self-ruminate about why potentially what did I do that they would not respond to me like this, which logs into the immature feminine where I'm considering everything and I'm taking in all perspectives, but I'm not oriented what to do with this. And then um yeah, I don't know how to handle that kind of overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a more mature feminine would be able to see what it does to me, like allow my emotions to come up, but I'm not fully taken by that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even know like maybe that's just not worth it, you know, it's not worth the trouble, or maybe I can really feel what happens in the other person rather than thinking what
Mm-hmm.
I think they are feeling about me, which is a
Yeah.
very different place. Like real compassion or empathy, like compassion is a very strong, mature, feminine expression, is to really take another perspective, but not
Mm-hmm.
just looking from my place and taking myself into or looking through my glasses, really taking the glasses of another person or walking their shoes.
And then immature, would pity for you be immature feminine?
That you
Pitying
pity
someone.
somebody,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, pity somebody else, pity myself, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes um like over emotional, dramatic. Everything is the drama, you know, like TV series, operas is like very often around that thing. Then you have those characters, you know, the very dramatic person and the very stoic man, and then they seem to live on different planets. And maybe, for example, if you again like go very archetypical, the masculine then becomes very focused, very disciplined, very driven. Action, can do a lot of stuff, but it becomes, if that goes on all the time, it's not even too much, but like if it doesn't have a counter force, it's like using your muscle all the time. If you go to the gym 24 hours, your muscle will not grow because they also need time to rest again. So if you only disciplined, only focused, only very hold yourself very accountable, but you don't allow another part of yourself to have space, then at one point you will become hard. And then it's not really true discipline anymore or true perseverance, because you're making yourself either very dry, like energetically also very dry, or hard. People get heart attacks because of that, or all kind of physical symptoms can follow, high blood pressure and all kind of things, because you're squeezing too hard. But at the same time, on the feminine, when you're more, it's more the pleasure principle and not so much the principle, the discipline principle. If you allow yourself to flow, which would nourish you because you open yourself so you can be more open and relax and chill, which men and humans, not just men, do. When you work hard, you come home and you want to chill, you know, you want to maybe drink a beer, or just a bubbly feminine expression, or drink something else, or eat something, nourish yourself, so you can have the strength again to go into an active mode. So that's very good. But if you do that too much, you become a couch potato, you know, like you become too much, no more clarity, no more focus, no more action, and you just like start to sink into your couch and blend and become one with the couch, you know, and just turn into mush. And then that does not have anything to do with openness. That just is when that is not counted. And then that's why for sometimes people, then it's a good thing, like, okay, go out and do something, because that brings you into a different moment. But for people that are just all the time out there, the CEOs that I manage that run an 80-hour workload and then run an Ironman on the weekend, you know, like maybe you can also chill sometimes, you know. And because relaxation does not only come after total exhaustion, but also is a state you can tap into any moment. So again, it's the balancing of these things that is not a set balance that is the same for everybody, but you need to find your own balancing and what actually creates more center in yourself.
So I'm a bit confused now by how we like divided those 4 quadrants up. I think somehow I was expecting, because I could look at this now and it's what are the in-between places? Is that just like how I express each of those qualities? Or are there actual qualities, for example, we could place as like that are neither strongly masculine nor feminine? Or would that always already be a mix of something more masculine, more feminine?
Yeah, I think now we place things that have a more distinct feature. I think there's a lot of things that are blends. They maybe don't come up right now because they're just expressions.
They're just not as like salient.
They're not as they don't have as much grip to the conversation. And also, of course, if we use a model like this, it's just a model. So it makes more sense to use things that have more, that define the places more. And the most important is that, and that's a practice in which we can go maybe with more time, because I'm seeing we're at the end of time. With more time, we could go into a practice instruction. But the essence of this is that you are neither of these.
Yeah.
And that you're the consciousness or the awareness that notices all these expressions of yourself come up. And sometimes the practice that I do, you sit yourself down and you contemplate a struggle or a problem, or just as a meditation practice, you see whatever comes up and you feel, where would that in tendency fall more? Not that it has to be the right quadrant or the right place exactly, but just that you feel like, oh, this is more an expression of this, or this is more an expression of that.
Yeah.
And then with this, it's not so much, the importance is not that this finds the right place, but that there is awareness of different parts or elements of yourself becoming conscious. And you start to have more information what actually you can rely on more, maybe what needs more your attention, because the immature places, they need something from you, either clarity or boundaries or care, like a very strong feminine mature quality, the ability to care. And so you become more centered and also more capable of taking care of yourself, rather than just relying on one or the other quality. Because what I see a lot with people is that they, through life, pick up certain principles and then start to orient their life very much in regard to certain qualities and principles. And sometimes they have already more balance in them, and sometimes they're very out of balance. And then you do that for a while and it works, but that becomes disastrous over longer periods of time, because you become very lopsided.
So I'm just gonna add to the immature masculine something that I notice coming up in me as we're talking. It's like looking for the one truth.
Exactly.
Which, yeah, we could also look with more nuance, because I think it can also be a very mature thing to like only look for the highest. But the way I'm noticing it coming up right now is like, and I know this with models, is like to take it as like the absolute thing that I'm now going to orient around and place everything within myself. Like, this is the thing that I now follow. And then like the stress of like, but it's not working.
Yeah, because of course in the masculine there is this, or the striving for clarity and map making and sense making and like understanding, which is beautiful. And it can become very analytical and brilliant. And of course, if we use that as our way to get to safety, it's very likely we will end up very fundamentalistic, or as a fundamental search for, and we need the one thing, and there's no more choice in it. Like, oh, it's good to know that the one thing contains the many, and vice versa. It's like it's the one thing, and everything else needs to be discarded. And that can make people very hard, can become very over analytical, very relying just on my intellect or whatever I find. And it turns into aloneness very often, which is a very strong experience that a lot of men more and more are making, that they become very alone on the inside. And it creates this like, if I find the one thing, then I'm safe. And then there's this anti-dependency of like not relying in a process of life, but like now I have it. And on the other side, there is maybe a lot of openness and a lot of relying on the process and the relationality, but it can become the classical word codependence, that I always need something from somebody else. There's not a lot of inner agency to stand on my own feet. Whereas I think a high tone of the mature feminine is a very active form of surrender and devotion, but it's not a disempowered place. That actually is an empowered place.
Yeah.
Where I can flow with life, but I'm not like I don't have agency in how this happens. No, I'm steering and I'm creating life, but I'm not forcing my way onto life.
Mm-hmm. I guess one more takeaway that I have from this is, if I don't have, so whenever I connect to any of these qualities, if I don't have access to the other side, whether it's the masculine or the feminine, there's a risk of it becoming immature, or like just overly expressed and one-sided, and then there's a
Yeah,
risk of this no longer being mature.
exactly. I think that it does not exist like that. There's that one thing. Like it's a principle of life. If you find something that's even true,
Mm-hmm.
but if you over rely, or if you take that to the extreme, it will lose the quality, or it will actually make you go into an immature form of this. It always
Mm-hmm.
needs like life is that kind of movement and that pendulum swing, and the balance is not in the no I have it. Balance is like in nature, like an ecosystem is not now we're in good balance. Let's
Mm-hmm.
nobody move. Let's have it. All the rabbits, all the foxes, stay where you are. Now it is.
Number stays the same.
Now we counted it all. We know exactly how many leaves we got. So don't move. It's the movement is in life, in the motion of itself. And yeah, and then we can already see, of course, we went into a very strong masculine, sometimes very immature exploration through modernity and our materialistic orientation in life, that into the objectification of everything. Everything's now we know it, but we don't. So
Cool.
have we profoundly confused everybody now?
Where do we place that?
Life.
Nice.
Yes. And maybe it's already an um, interesting for people just to listen and explore, but sometimes you can just sit down and with yourself, or take a piece of paper and just write down for you what comes up during a day or in a specific situation, and see what emerges. And for example, I had a conversation today, just to share one life example from myself. um, I know I have a tendency, when life needs a decision of me, that I go with the oh let's see version of like let it unfold. And it's an interesting dance, because of course there is a quality that I know myself, that I can really go with the flow and to surrender and listen
Mm-hmm.
to what life wants to make happen. But if I don't be really mindful or in tendency, I could go into the part of like becoming too passive, into the immature feminine, and let something or life or whatever, something else decide for me, because I don't want to make a decision and bear the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know if I fall into that place, then I feel a little bit like I can get overwhelmed and a little bitchy and like, oh, life, and frustrated and like irritated, all nice expressions of that quality.
Yes.
And then what actually helps me is to go to the conscious masculine and say, okay, what's the focus actually now? What's actually going on? And then I make a decision and I bear the consequences, and I make sure I'm dealing with what's happening rightly there. And then I can use a lot of my feminine to take care of the relationships and what's needed there. And then I've done my bid,
Yeah.
and then I can also surrender again and see what happens.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love this example. I think it's such a beautiful place where it's such a great quality to be able to listen. But if that's the default option, life happening is not always mature things happening. It could be that someone coming from a very immature place is like really guiding the direction somewhere. And then I need the ability to course correct and to like enforce something else. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and in my example, just to round that up, because sometimes then if I don't take care of this, like, and I'm hanging on too much into the, oh, let's see, an unconscious part of my masculine gets pissed and like, okay, now we're gonna need to really make sure something's happening, and it gets a little bit hard and rigid then, and
Yeah.
then makes a decision without talking to anybody. And then
Yes.
in myself, I create clarity, but then on the outside, they say like what you said, let's see, and now it's boom.
Yes.
Where is that coming from? And
Yes.
then it becomes like that controlling mechanism, but I feel then very alone with it. And so I need the movement out somewhere so that I can access the other mature versions of myself. And then it becomes a regenerative cycle rather than a destructive cycle, which
Yeah.
we all know it can go quickly down the spiral.
Nice.
All right. Maybe that's a good way to end it for today.
Yes. Thank you for this, Gregor.
Thank you, David.